Hey there, it's David and John, Debt-Free Guys.
Hello.
Hope you're all doing great. Today, John and I have the privilege of hosting the Experian CreditChat. We are co-opting their normal CreditChat, taking it over and hosting it on the Debt-Free Guys channel on our page. Today, we're going to be talking about the various ways that you can conquer debt. As many of you know, that is our number one story.
Our number one story.
I would say besides our story of our love for each other.
It's the platform where we got started.
Right, exactly. So just a little bit of our backstory. John and I met back in 2003. And we're in our puppy love phase, of course. And during that whole time, we were spending lots of money, not caring really pretty much about anything but just spending our time together. It wasn't but maybe a year and a half later that we had an aha or come to Jesus moment. And that's when John and I confessed to each other that we had $51,000 in credit card debt. And that was really tough for us because we were at a point in our lives where we were hoping to have been making a lot of progress. We wanted to be doing things, and we started to realize that we couldn't do the things that we wanted to do in life. We couldn't get married. We couldn't buy a house. We couldn't take the vacations that we wanted to. We couldn't purchase the vehicles that we wanted to. And that was all happening because we were drowning in consumer debt. And so we took charge and said that we're going to pay that off. And we did that in approximately 2.5 years. And over that 2.5 years, John and I began to realize the importance of the steps that we were taking and realizing that there are so many people out there we're in the exact same position that we were in, and even today are in the exact same position. Many people have a lot more than $51,000 in consumer debt. And we think about all of the students, individuals who have graduated and they have massive student debt. All of that debt is preventing people in general from being able to achieve the things that they want in life because so much of that money is being siphoned off into something, as I like to say, it anchors us to our past purchases or our past experiences. So we want to be able to use our money for what we want to do right now or plan for the future, and we can't do that when we're mired in debt. And so because of that story, that's the reason why Experian has asked John and I to take over the Credit Chat today. We're doing a Facebook Live as well as John is helping manage the Tweet Chat, which is over on Twitter. So if you follow us on Twitter, shout out to all those people who are following us on Twitter as well. So our goal
there.
Yeah, exactly. Our goal today is to give you some insight into our story of conquering debt, along with going through a series of 10 questions that really highlight various steps that we took, questions that you may have, preparing you with some simple tools and things that you can use to help you conquer your debt as well. So I'd like to give a shout out to everyone who is following along and has joined us. We really appreciate it. We are unfortunately not going to be responding to very many of the comments because both of us are each of us manning a platform today, but we thought we would take advantage of this opportunity to share a little bit more with you. So I'm going to jump in here with our very first question.
No, you're going a little bit too fast. We have 1 more minute, according to Christina Wollman. I don't know how Christina and Michael do this. This is a lot of stress.
Right. Yeah, definitely. We have to give a shout out to the Experian team, how they do this every single week, where they gather a group of people to discuss a subject that is along the lines of debt or credit, oftentimes things that many people, not just a few, but many people have questions about. And sometimes that can be related to life experiences or things that we need to do to prepare, such as will, states, and trusts, which was one of the topics that they planned on covering this year. Holiday shopping, which is kind of one that oftentimes gets people in trouble.
We're talking about that already.
Right, exactly. And so they cover a variety of topics. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in with our first question here.
All right, yes, let's go ahead and get started. I think everybody's joined us that will be joining us. If you haven't come already, please do so. Our first question is, what common excuses keep people from getting out of debt?
Right.
Hashtag credit card.
If you can, let's see here, right down there, you can see the question. Sorry. So this is a crazy one because it really makes you reflect inward. And that's exactly what John and I had to do when we were digging out of or coming up with the reason why we were in so much debt. We had to reflect inward. And even today, even with some of our spending, we find ourselves coming up with excuses that allow us to do things or to not do things. And I think to myself, a lot of the things that, words that come to mind, well, I deserve it, or I work hard, or it's not my fault that this has happened. Maybe you're dealing with an alimony situation, or maybe you had a medical incident that you've acquired a lot of this debt, or in some cases with many students, they weren't cognizant and didn't know what was going on, and their parents put them into student loans, thinking that this would allow them to be able to advance their careers. So oftentimes the excuses that we make are the things that are holding us back. They're the things that are making us say I can't, rather than I can, I will, I'm going to. And so when we think about some of those excuses, they either prevent you from doing what you know is right, or they hold you back from doing prevent you from doing what you know is right, or they allow you to do the things that you know are wrong. And excuses are something that we all make. We do that. I think a lot of us do that in the morning when we want to hit the snooze button. But
1,000 times.
Oftentimes those excuses are linked to maybe our beliefs about ourselves, maybe our beliefs about our abilities. I can't pay off my debt because I can't earn more, or I can't pay off my debt because I can't get a different job because I don't have the right skills. And so, as I mentioned, oftentimes those excuses are the things that we use to put up that word can't. So John and I encourage, when you're thinking about how to conquer your debt, you come to the table with all of the possibilities. And one of our favorite things to do when thinking about paying off debt and overcoming those excuses is to think about the life that you really want. What does that life that you really want look like? And think about those opportunities and things that you wanted to do. One of the things John and I wanted to do is we wanted to be able to buy our own home. And since paying off our debt, that was one of the things that we have been able to do. But one of the things that we ask you to do is maybe think about all of those dreams that you have, and the opportunities, the things that you want. All of those things will allow you to move forward. Build that list. And if you're working together with someone, if you are with a partner, a spouse, sit down together and actually look at that list of what are the things you want. Maybe short-term goals, your dreams and wants. Maybe it's simply you just want to pay off $1,000. Or maybe you have a long-term goal. You want to be able to buy a home or have a certain amount set aside for retirement. Think about all of those things first, because those will be the motivators to allow you to get what you want.
Exactly. I think for us, it was critical to figure out what it is that we most wanted, and not what others thought we should want or what we felt like we should be expected to want. David and I didn't want a gigantic house. When all of our friends were buying, several thousand feet houses or building their own houses, we didn't want that. We didn't want to be house poor. Our goal is to travel more, and keeping aligned with what our goals were helped us not only get out of debt, but stay out of debt since then.
Exactly. And not that our friends are house poor, but they knew what was appropriate for them. And we had friends who were buying these large homes because they already had several children. So it was what was appropriate for them. But think again, like John said, often I can't imagine that ends up being an excuse for many people, that I have to have this particular home because that's what my family expects. I have to drive this particular car or go on these particular vacations, doing all of these particular things because that's what people expect of us. And we allow those obligations that other people put on us to become the reason why we make excuses about getting out of debt.
Exactly.
All right, so shall we move on to question number 2?
Did it pop up yet?
Yeah.
We got to keep our people up to speed.
All right, so question number 2. Is it possible to live a life without debt? And if so, how?
It is. And in fact, we've realized that our lives could be better without debt. Here all along, we were thinking that we needed our credit cards to have the quality of life that we thought we needed to live up to. And it wasn't until after we paid off our debt and realized that we essentially gave ourselves a $10,000 raise, paying off $51,000 worth of credit card debt because we weren't paying $10,000 a year in interest payments. That was going towards our quality of life, towards our retirement.
Right.
At that time, when we paid off our debt to save to buy our condo.
Right. And when you think about it, a life without debt basically means that you are spending less money than you make. And do you know anyone who has gotten rich spending more money than they make? It's impossible. It's impossible to get rich spending more money than you make because you're always going further and further into the hole. And so if you look out there and you see somebody that has the lifestyle that you want, whether that's rich or not, maybe they have rich in experiences, if they have the lifestyle that you want, think that those individuals are doing that because they are spending less than they make. It's absolutely possible. Anyone who has paid off a significant amount of debt is living a debt-free life because they're spending less than what they're making, and that the money that they're spending, that they're not spending, that extra money can be put towards that debt, or it can be put towards accumulation. And when we look at the world we live in today, we are almost obliged to and almost goaded into, people encourage us to the extreme, to take on massive amounts of debt, whether that's student loan debt or individuals saying, oh, well, you deserve this kind of car, or you work hard. So we oftentimes think that we have to. And many people think that it's not possible for them to acquire the things that they want without having some sort of debt. But it certainly is.
I think something that, as we're discussing this, it makes me wonder if we're losing the skills to live a life on cash, to pay with only cash. Most of us have become accustomed to using, whether it's credit cards or debit cards, we're using a card, or even some of us are using the iPay. Is that what it is?
Apple Pay.
Apple Pay.
Or various pays
we're
on
getting
phones.
more and more disconnected from what the feeling of the transfer of cash is like.
Right.
And so I think many of us are almost afraid to go out of the house with just cash. What if I get to the grocery store clerk and it's 10 cents over what I have available in my pocket, or worse, $10 over in my pocket? Right. I think we've learned how to plan for and use cash.
Exactly. You know, it reminds me of two statistics. One that says that for individuals who use a debit card, they spend 12% more than if they were paying cash. And for individuals who use a credit card, they spend 18% more than if they were using cash. And the example I like to give is similar to the one that John just mentioned. You're sitting at dinner, you're looking at the menu, and you have $20 in your pocket. And you have the option of buying a $12 entree and a $6 appetizer. And you know that if you buy the $6 appetizer and the $12 entree, and then you add tax and tip on top of that, you're going to be over $20. Or you have the option of just buying the entree and spending less. You spend under $20. Because we have a debit card or because we have a credit card, oftentimes we opt for that more expensive purchase. And that goes for a lot of the purchases that we make. We know that we have a specific amount of money, but we think to ourselves, okay, I've got a little bit of reserve. I can rob from the amount of money that I was going to send to my credit cards, or I can rob from the amount of money I was setting aside for a friend's birthday or a trip, and we do that continually, slowly robbing a little bit money from here and there and here and there. And that's how we slowly eat away at our ability to spend less than we make.
Yeah. So we're having a great chat on Twitter. If you're not able to stay on the Facebook Live with us, please, or you want to increase your stimuli, join us also on Twitter. We've got a lot of great personal finance bloggers and people all over joining us on this credit chat. This is great.
Exactly. And you know, that brings up a good point. There are many people out there in the personal finance space. If you're looking to live a debt-free life, one where you're spending less than you're making, just find a personal finance blogger. There are thousands of us who are working our way through either having already paid off debt or currently paying off debt so that we can have that lifestyle that we've always wanted.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And I think for us, one of the things that we struggled with was, we had these limiting beliefs about ourselves and about money and about what we were worth. And so we always thought that we couldn't live the lifestyle we wanted if it wasn't on credit card. If you forget, we also felt like we needed to keep up with our peers, especially in the LGBT community. I know that everybody has the struggle of living up to the Joneses. But when you're trying to keep up with Mr. and Mr. Jones, it's even more daunting.
Seems like, right.
Because we have this perception that LGBT people just have these fabulous lives, and it's many of us are struggling financially. There are the 1% of us that are doing great, but many of us are trying to keep up with the 1%, and oftentimes to our own detriment.
Right. I think one of the other things that John and I oftentimes think about during this discussion is social media. And the idea that all we project on social media typically is the great things that are happening in our lives. So all of us think that all of our friends have these amazing lives and they're always traveling and they're always doing, well, that's because we're constantly getting reminded by the positive things that are happening in people's lives. But sometimes when we're in that social media space, we need to take a step back and say, okay, I love what they're doing, I appreciate what they're doing, but this is the best part of their lives, the cream of the crop. And we need to remember that that's probably what we share too. They also have the other things that are happening in their lives that maybe make life a little bit more difficult. And a reminder to us that we don't have to always constantly be proving to everyone that we have this amazing life.
Hashtag truth. All right, we're talking too much. Time for question 3.
Right.
The Twitter chat room is way ahead of us.
Okay, so let's move on to question number 3. And question number 3 is, how does debt affect your credit score? So there's a couple ways that debt can affect your credit score. First of all, one of the things that you want to take into consideration is what's called credit utilization. And credit utilization just basically means the percentage of the credit that you have available to you that you are using. So if you have $10,000 of credit available to you on a credit card and you're using $6,000 of that, you are using 60% of it. And the higher your credit utilization is, the more debt that you have, the higher that number goes, the risky you are. Right, thank you. The more risky you are, the banks think you are a riskier person, which means it's harder for you to then get the credit that you need in case of an emergency or in the times that you want to make a purchase. So what will happen is, as your credit utilization score goes up, or a percentage goes up, your credit score will actually drop. And when you see individuals typically going above that 40 to 50% range, that's when you're going to see it adversely impact your credit score. One of the important things is that your credit utilization makes up approximately 30% of your credit score. So if you want, and that is one of the largest numbers that impacts your credit score. So if you want a high credit score, you have to keep your credit utilization down, and that means you have to keep your debt level down.
I think an important point to bring up now is oftentimes people think that they're doing great financially and that they must have good credit score because the credit card company or the bank just increased their credit limit. Well, clearly, if they put an additional $1,000 more on my credit cards available to use, I must have good credit. Right. But that's not always the case. So it's up to you to contact one or all 3 of the credit rating agencies to confirm that your reports are good and that your score stays high. Likewise, even though we had $51,000 worth of credit card debt, we always maintain good credit scores. So that it's not like they're necessarily synonymous. Because we could have probably gone to a bank and gotten a loan when technically we probably didn't really deserve it.
We shouldn't have. Well, and the fact is, we know that happened to a lot of individuals when it came to the housing market of 2008, 2009. They were taking on massive amounts of debt. And that's one of the other factors that can come into play here is your debt to income ratio. The more debt you have compared to the income that you have, the higher that number goes, then the riskier you are to those banks, which then also forces down your credit score. So,
they're riskier.
Risk averse is what. Yeah,
risky.
Right, exactly. John and I we wrote an article on our website debtfreeguys.com about when to close a credit card account, and it has a discussion in there about credit utilization and the impacts that your debt on your credit cards can have on your credit score. So check that one out. We'll put that in the show notes. I'm sorry, in the notes of the.
We're not on our podcast,
right? Exactly. We're not doing the podcast right now. We'll add that to comments here on Facebook Live later on.
Yeah, I think it's important. Oftentimes people say, okay, I'm going to become debt-free starting now. I'm going to stop acquiring this debt. So one of the things, and it kind of makes sense, one of the things they do is they'll call their credit card companies and cancel all their credit cards. Because like us, one of the first things that we did to stop acquiring credit cards debt was to simply stop using them.
Right.
We didn't close our credit cards, but then when you close your credit cards, you lose your history, and history is such an important factor in your credit score. You don't want to deter that.
Right.
We're on to question 4.
All right. Question number 4. Okay, here we go. Question number 4. Are debt and credit the same thing? Absolutely not.
Hashtag no.
Yes. Debt is the amount of money that you owe. Simply put, that is the amount of money that you owe to someone else. So you go to the bank and you take out a loan for $26,000 to buy that awesome new Honda Civic. And
I do like the new Honda Civic.
I know you do. That's why
every time I keep seeing on the road, I'm like, "That's a cool car." And then it's a Honda.
Right.
So I'm a Honda girl. David's an Audi boy.
Yeah, exactly. So that $26,000 you borrowed, once you sign that contract, that is the debt that you have. Credit, on the other hand, is your ability to borrow. It's what the banks think you are, or lenders think that you are able to cover when they look at your credit score, when they look at your history of payments. All of that helps them to determine what kind of line of credit or amount of money that they would be willing to lend to you. So you may have a great credit score. Let's say your credit score is 820, and you go to the bank and you want to borrow $400,000 so that you can purchase a new home. Well, that may be perfect and that may be great because of your credit score. They're going to view you as a smart credit risk. And so they would be willing to lend you that $400,000 as credit. So kind of think of it as the debt is the money that you owe them because you've already borrowed it. Credit is the money that you could have available to you. So you're going to go pre-qualify for a loan, and that credit amount is the amount that you've pre-qualified for. So, yeah. Any other comments on credit versus debt?
No, it seems like it's pretty unanimous on the Twitter chat anyway that the two are not synonymous.
Right.
People are saying absolutely not. Nope, credit and debt are different, and these awesome experts have already stated that. Hashtag credit. Right. I know she's talking about us. Thank you, yes. Jennifer Hempel. I will take it as a compliment to us directly.
All right. Moving quickly through that question that helps us catch up because of the last one being a little bit long. So let's move on to question number 5 here. All right, question number 5. What are practical steps to take to get out of debt? Well, I think that one of the ones that John and I first talked about at the very beginning was that we started to look at what are our hopes and dreams. And that way we knew that there were things that we wanted to do. Then for us, the next step was, what is preventing us from doing that? Why are we holding ourselves back? Whether that was looking at the actual debt that we had or our spending habits, we looked at the barriers to us getting what we wanted. And then the third step was, how do we break down those barriers? How do we break down those barriers so that we can remove them and move forward? So some practical steps. First, look at what you want. Secondly, look at the barriers. Third, look at what it would take for you to overcome that. Now, those are very high level. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to elaborate on that. When David and I finally hit our rock bottom, when we finally communicated to each other that we had a net total of $51,000 worth of credit card debt between the two of us, that was our rock bottom, and we became depressed. We started to, over the course, it took us a couple of months to realize what it is we truly wanted. First we had to understand what were we doing wrong. Here we were, two financial services professionals with all this debt, living in a basement apartment. So we had to realize, what were we doing wrong?
Right.
And it didn't take us long to realize that we weren't staying true to who we were, or we weren't aligned with what our goals and values were. We were living other people's goals and values. And so it took us a couple months to realize what it is we truly wanted in life. And then only then could we then analyze what were the blockers preventing us from acquiring the life that we wanted. And I think once we realized what we most wanted, that gave us all the motivation and incentive to do what was necessary in that third step to break down those financial barriers.
Right. Yeah.
But it does take some time because we've all got this stimuli coming at us. We're always being told via media and Facebook that we need all these better and newer things. And it takes some solitude and some personal reflection to realize what's most important to you.
Exactly. I think one of the other practical steps, most important practical steps, you know that if you have a lot of debt, you know that you've been, most of the cases, you know you've been living beyond your means. You're spending more. And that's exactly, John and I knew that we were spending more than we were making. And so then we had to take a realistic look at that spending and say, what can we do to reduce that spending? And you can't reduce your spending until you know actually what it is you're spending on. So the one of the biggest pieces and one of the biggest eye-openers to us was when we did our spending analysis. And I'm a bit of a numbers geek. so I sat down with an Excel spreadsheet and every single one of our bank statements for a year, whether it was a credit card, a debit card, a checking account, savings account, we looked at every place where we spent our money. And it was astounding to us. The areas where we were spending money where we didn't think. You know, we thought, oh, well, we'll just spend a little bit of money here. We'll just do this, we'll do that. And when we started looking at these categories of where we were spending, things like food, dining out, those two categories, grocery shopping and dining out, were astounding to us.
We were spending $400 a week dining out, and we were also spending $400 a week on groceries.
Right.
And we're just two people.
Right.
And I don't think I'm that fat.
Right. And as John likes to say, that once we figured that out and we made some changes to our grocery shopping and dining out habits, somebody lost a dress size.
I did.
And I found it, actually. So, but it was doing that analysis that really helped. It helped us then say, okay, we know what categories we're overspending in, and we could then mentally take the steps to prevent us from continuing to overspend in those categories. And we immediately then turned that money that we were no longer spending in those categories on our debt, and that allowed us to pay our debt off quickly. I will say that one of the other things that we do is, or we encourage as a practical step, is it's very hard to stop the bleeding for the debt when you are continuing to pay those high interest rates. Mm-hmm. So,
tell them about the debt lasso method, David.
Right. So John and I came up with the debt lasso method. You've all heard of the snowball method and the avalanche method. Snowball, basically, you're paying off your smallest credit card first. As you pay off that credit card, then you take that payment and put it into the next one, and the amount of your payment just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and it goes towards that particular to the next card. The avalanche one is where you focus on paying off the highest interest rate first. As you pay off that highest interest rate, then you move your payment down to the next lowest interest rate and the next lowest, and so the long-term interest is being accumulated on those lower interest rates. So John and I basically said, let's combine those together. Let's look for the lowest interest rate and pay them off as quickly as we can. And what we basically started doing was refinancing our debt to lower interest rates. And we team up with a company called Payoff that if you have a credit score of 660 or above, you can get a loan from them to pay off your credit card debt at a lower interest rate. It's not going to be zero interest, obviously. They are in business to make money, like many people are, but they can help you lower your interest rates. So we encourage you to check that out as one of those practical steps, because that's going to allow you to make even more progress. So that rather than paying 20% every month, annually on your credit cards, you're paying a little bit less.
Tell the audience about money chunking, David.
Yeah, that's true. You have to think of some creative ways to figure out how to spend your money. And money chunking, when John and I went on our path to paying off our debt, one of the things we did say was that we were going to go on the envelope system. We were going to set aside money for each category, and that was the only money that we were going to spend. And the first couple of times that we did that, we set aside an amount of money for social spending, and that was going to last us for the pay period, which for us was we were paid twice a month. And all of a sudden, the first weekend, boom, all that money was gone. We just blew it right away. So what we devised, and this is similar to, John likes to sit down with a pint of Ben & Jerry's, give David a bite.
Don't give my bedroom secrets away.
John gives David a bite, and that's enough for me for a little while. And then 15 minutes later, David looks over at John and says, "Can I have another bite?" And of course, the pint of Ben & Jerry's is gone. So what we did is say, eat that pint of Ben & Jerry's a little slower. Wow. And so the same thing with your categories of your spending, especially for those ones when you're using cash. We encourage you to break those down into smaller amounts. So for example, we decided that we were going to spend $50 a weekend on our social spending. What we would do is we would challenge each other. Can you come up with a date for $20? And we did that several times where we were able to spend less than $20 or around $20, and that allowed us to have the same amount of fun, but do it at a lot lower price.
It's not easy, though.
No.
Fun, but not easy.
Yes.
All right,
exactly.
Next question. Twitter's way ahead of us.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's move on to question number 6. So here we go. Question number 6 is, how can people track their debt payoff strategy?
Jennifer Hempel says, I love using powerpay.org with my clients. It's free and effective. I have not heard of that, so we'll have to check that out. Thank you, Jennifer Hempel.
Yes,
that
thanks,
is
Jen.
powerpay.org.
Great. So we have a couple of other suggestions. John and I wrote a post about creating a debt plan and paying off your debt. And there is a free app in that post. You can link to that. So if you go to debtfreeguys.com/debt-plan-app. So or if you just want to search for Debt Free Guys Debt Plan app, you can see that post, and there is an app in there. Unfortunately, it's only available on the iPhone right now, but that app is a super, super simple app that allows you to take a look at how long it's going to take to pay off your credit card debt, or any debt actually. You can plug in your various pieces of debt, the interest rate that you're paying, projected amount of money that you would be able to spend or send each month to those payments, and it will give you a calculation. Now, of course, I'm a numbers geek, and so I just did ours in Excel. I created an Excel spreadsheet and created a debt plan or debt payoff plan for us. There are a lot of other tools out there that offer and encourage individuals to pay off debt. Our friend Jackie Beck at the Debt Myth created a very sophisticated, very nice app that's available in the App Store and I think also in Google Play. I'm going to forget the name of her app now. I think it's called Debt Payoff.
I will tell you, David. It is called the Pay Off Debt app.
Yeah.
Pay Off Debt app, hashtag.
Right, and the nice thing about the one that Jackie created is that it allows you to plug in the numbers, the amount that you have on your credit cards, or the amount of debt that you have, your amount of payment, and then it gives you a projection, and you can see a chart. It will chart out your progress. There are suggestions and ideas within her app as to how to pay off your debt more quickly. So check that app out on iTunes and Google Play.
Absolutely. I will add, though, that we are an affiliate of Jackie's app, so if you happen to go to our website and find a link to her app, we get a little back payment for that.
Yeah. Her debt, I think her app is $4.99. But again, it's a very nice, very sophisticated app. All right.
Absolutely. But I'll also add, people today are always looking for these tools and apps, and they want like an app that they can have on their arm and stuff like that to help them pay off debt and lose weight. But by and large, we tracked everything, we managed everything with a simple Excel spreadsheet. Right. So you don't necessarily need all these fancy tools. They're helpful and they're fun, but Excel works just fine.
Right. Yeah. Do what works for you. And this is one of the things that John and I have always said when it comes to paying off your debt, that if it's difficult or you don't enjoy it, you're not going to keep doing it. And that's part of the reason why we came up with money chunking. We devised all of these little strategies that would allow us to still have fun while we were paying off our debt. We became couponers, and we challenged each other to see how low we could get our grocery bill or various various trips to shopping.
Watch your language, David.
We definitely tried to lower our costs. And so we came up with all these games and devised these things so that we would motivate each other and keep each other going so we can continue to pay off our debt.
Yeah. All right. Twitter's ahead of us again.
All right. So
we're talking while they're typing.
All right. Let's move on to question number 7 here.
Question number 7, what resources or apps can help those budgeting or paying down debt? Right. So we've kind of been talking a little bit about that, but I'll add a couple of additional apps that we have used to test before we share with clients or before we write about them. Are Mint has an app.
Yep.
They have a pretty cool app.
Yep. It's just Mint. Go to mint.com, or you can go into the Apple Store and then Google Play.
The App Store?
Yeah, Apple App Store. And I think it's just under Mint. I'm pretty sure if you just type in Mint, M-I-N-T, that you'll find it. You have some other suggestions here?
Yeah, I also add, we're also fans of Personal Capital's app.
Right.
One of the benefits about their app is that you can also track the performance of your investments. So you're not only worrying about your cash flow, but you're actually tracking your investments as well. So if you have a more complicated financial existence, then you can use that app.
Right. Again, some of these apps, that app, and then I think also there's one called Envelopes. It's M as in Mary, M-V-E. Oh, great. I'm not going to be able to spell it now.
It's M as in Mary, V-E-L-O-P-E-S.
Right. So it's just like the word envelopes, but take off the E-N and slap an M in the front of it. That app similarly allows you to set up categories for spending, and then will give you guidance as to whether or not you're overspending or underspending, similar to the Mint app and the Personal Capital app. Those apps are all great around figuring out how to understand where you're spending, keeping track of your spending. Now, one of the important things that you have to do is, if you're going to use an app like that or any of those apps, you have to be diligent about making sure you're connecting all of your accounts to those apps and that you're categorizing things properly. We did notice this sometimes, that we would be using an app like that and a transaction would come through and we would think that it was all of that was for one item. So say, for example, you shop at Walmart or you shop at Target, you could break your purchases down to groceries versus personal care or maybe pet care or household items. So it's very easy to maybe get a little lax, and then you don't get a clear picture of where it is that you're spending the things that you're spending on. So.
I'll also add, again, these apps are great, all these tools are great. Nothing's going to work, including a debt consolidation company, whether they're for-profit or non-profit. Nothing is going to work until you actually make the decision to pay off your debt.
Absolutely.
You've got to, whether you have to get to such an uncomfortable place or you're a little bit more conscious than that, you don't need to go to that point until you actually make the decision that it's time to pay off your debt, or that you're not going to go back into debt again, or that you're going to improve your financial situation, whatever that may be. Until you make that decision, none of the tools, tricks, tips, motivational videos, chats, whatever, none of those things are going to work. It's going to have to be an internal decision.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the resources that we will say, and we will reiterate this, I'm having a hard time with my words today.
No, what's going on?
I will reiterate this, that there are thousands of people out there who are doing it today. And you may not realize it, but your neighbor or your friend, an acquaintance of yours that you know is going through the exact same thing that you are in trying to figure out how to pay off their debt. One of the things that John and I always encourage individuals to do is to find an accountability partner. If it's not your spouse, your significant other that you can rely on, if it's not your best friend, get with someone else who is going through something similar. And that can be your number one resource, because sometimes you need somebody to right your ship, somebody to say to you, okay, you made a mistake, but let's get back on track. And having that accountability partner is somebody who can absolutely do that for you. And the other thing is, on social media, there are thousands of us who are trying to help individuals do exactly that, is to pay off their debt, get the lifestyle they want, rather than going backwards financially.
Yeah, I'll add that one of the first things that David and I did when we decided that it was time for us to pay off our debt was we let our friends know that, hey, we weren't going to be able to live the same kind of lifestyle that we've been living up until this point. We want to pay off our debt. This is very important to us. And even though some of our friends didn't have debt to pay off, many of them had other financial goals,
right,
whether it was to save for a house or they wanted to prepare to have a child. Numerous reasons why it made sense for them to also maybe dial back their spending as well. So we had a lot of support and camaraderie with our friends, because even though they weren't paying off debt, some of them were, but a lot of them weren't. Everybody can probably do to cut back a little bit, and maybe you can be the inspiration to your friends or family to put yourself, all of you, in a better financial position.
Exactly.
Question number 8.
All right, let's move along here. Question number 8. And thanks again for everyone for joining us. We really appreciate this.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here we go. How can someone who has escaped debt stop from going back into debt? So confession. John and
Confession on a dance floor?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you got to throw it. He's got to get a Madonna reference into everything we do. So anyway,
She's so important to all of us.
When John and I paid off our debt the very first time, we were fortunate enough to have that coincide with John's best friend. Her wedding was in Mexico. And we were also smart enough to know that if we took that trip, we would spend a certain amount of money. So we challenged ourselves to come up with the cash to be able to take that trip and not come back with any debt. And we absolutely did that. But what happened was, when we came back from that trip, we started to drift back into our old habits. Some of our habits of, and it also was, some of it was a little bit around this idea of, we felt a lot better about ourselves. We wanted to reward ourselves. We had been going for 2.5 years.
We thought we deserved it.
Exactly, we did.
Dangerous words. Yeah. I deserve this.
It's exactly, Lan. Go back to the question number 1. We fell back into debt, and actually we fell back to the point where we, I think, had at one point we had $6,000 or $7,000 in credit card debt again, because we started enjoying a lifestyle that was beyond our means, and so we had to spend the time to dig back out of that hole of debt. So what is most important is that when you are at that point, when you're getting ready to cross over the threshold and you celebrate the fact that you no longer have any debt, make sure that you don't go back to your old habits. Maintain those good habits. That will allow you to build a cushion, and that's one of the things that John and I learned to do, was to build a cushion that would allow us to have bits of money here and there that we would use when we would overspend. So we had that little bit of a cushion. Of course, we had our emergency savings account already, but we built a little bit of a spending cushion. And we basically had to go back in and adjust our budget to the money that we now had coming in. And it allowed us, because of us going back to our old habits of living very much similar to the way we were when we were paying off our debt, that allowed us to start to acquire the assets and the money that provided us with the lifestyle that we wanted, or the lifestyle that we have now. One of the big advantages that we had because of doing that was in 2012, John and I both worked for a company that provided a sabbatical that basically gave us 4 weeks in a row off from work, a paid time period, and we took that 4 weeks off, and we went to Australia and New Zealand for 30 days, and we did all of that because we maintained those habits that we had when we had gotten out of debt. We maintained those long enough for us to save up enough money to go on that trip with cash. So it's maintaining those habits is the best way that once you've gotten out of debt, you don't fall back into debt. So, all right. Any other comments there from the Twitter stream?
Yeah, Matt Schultz says, avoid enablers that helped drive you into that debt to begin with. The right support system is so critical. Who just said something like that? It's all the company you keep, right?
Exactly.
Find what Lisa Nichols always says, find people who are 2 to 10 steps ahead of you.
Right.
And try to catch up with them.
Right. And I think it goes all the way back to Earl Nightingale, but so many other motivational speakers, transformational speakers have mentioned this, that you are the accumulation of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you want to see what your life is going to be like in 5 years, look at the people you spend the most time with. And so if you are spending your time with individuals who are constantly spending, or high rollers, you might say, then you will be a high roller as well, but you may not have the income. So try to focus on ways that you can maintain those good habits.
Exactly. So we're on to question number 9. What should someone do if they feel completely out of control with their spending and debt?
Yeah. So I like to say that the most important thing here is to take a deep breath and stop and think about it. The positives that would happen if you were to get out of debt. Don't focus on the negative. It's so easy to fall into that. And John and I saw recently, were made aware of a statistic that said that individuals who attempt suicide are 8 times more likely to be in debt. So debt can be a weight on us mentally. So if you are struggling, if you're trying to get control of your spending, take a little bit of time just to stop, slow down, and think. The next thing that we recommend, and John and I have done this a number of times, what we call a dinero detox. Many people call this a money-free weekend. You just basically get off of the spending train. And there are many, many ways to do this. If you go to our website and just search for dinero detox, there's a whole post about how to do this. But basically what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for a weekend where money is not a factor in what you're thinking about, because you're not going out, you're not spending, but there are so many ways for you to have a good time and enjoy a great weekend, maybe even get some of the things done that you've been wishing you could get done. All of that can happen when one of these dinero detox weekends, and basically you're freeing yourself from the need to spend, and you'll be amazed at how much money that you will be able to then turn around and put towards your debt, especially if you do these dinero detoxes on a regular basis. Regular basis. Yeah,
Hashtag basis.
All right.
It's like when we were in New Zealand and they had pests. That's how they say pests.
All right.
But I think pretty much what you're saying though with the dinero detox, it's not unlike our strategy with money chunking is just coming up with a budget, whether it's $0 or it's $50 or $100, and say we're not going to spend more than this money this weekend. And it's kind of refreshing to say we're not going to spend any money this weekend. It sounds harder than it is, but it's actually quite. It's what a detox is all about, right?
Right. It's refreshing.
Cleaning and refreshing yourself.
Exactly.
And it makes your skin look better too.
Right.
We all like good skin.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that one of the other things that what you can do when you feel totally out of control is look for a constant. Look for something that you can go to that is a non-spending thing that will allow you to gain back some of that mental state, that self-control. I think of individuals who love to read. So if you love to read, spend some time at the library. Check out a couple of books that will allow you to just clear your mind and back yourself down from this edge of feeling like you're out of control. That can really help. I think that one of the other things, again, that John and I did is that we relied on each other. We really look to each other for that support. So having that accountability partner, whether that's your spouse or significant other or someone else, we encourage you to reach out to someone and get that kind of support. So, all right. Any other comments coming from Twitter?
Well, there does seem to be a trend from people saying check out nonprofit financial counselors. LSS Financial said, and nonprofit financial counselors around the country are here to help you at all times. They're a nonprofit credit counseling company. In Denver, there's also Empowered, which is another nonprofit credit counseling company. So there are resources out there. Some people are a little bit concerned about credit counseling companies that charge money or debt consolidation companies that charge money, this might be an alternative solution for you.
Right. There's a lot of those nonprofit organizations that are out there that can help you gain control and set you up with a good plan that will allow you to pay off your debt.
And basically, that's what it all comes down to, is just come up with a plan to fix your debt.
Exactly.
Once you've made the decision that you want to become debt-free, all you then need is a plan, and that's why we said figure out what it is you want, what you need to fix, and how committed you are to fixing it.
Exactly.
That pretty much helps you create your plan.
Right. And I'll just reiterate here the 4 principles that John and I came up with when we were paying off our debt that allowed us to get on track financially and make the progress that we have today. So the first thing for us was becoming money conscious. We had this unconscious spending attitude. We would just spend using our credit cards or our debit cards. We would just spend without really thinking about what would that spending would have, an impact that would have on us later on down the line. So getting control of how it is you're spending is that money is becoming money conscious, really being aware of how much money you make, how much money you're spending, and where the rest of it's going. The next step was, in our case, was cash is king. We knew that it was important for us to focus on living a credit card-less lifestyle. We needed to break away from those because we knew that if we didn't, we would lapse back into those old habits. The other is that budget is a way of life. So we knew that it wasn't that we wouldn't get ourselves out of debt if we made a temporary change. We needed to make those habits stick. And that's the thing that's happened. I mean, John and I look at our budget. Well, I look at it on a regular basis. I probably look at it about 4 or 5 times a month. I look at our spending. But it's being aware that your lifestyle is built on the yeses that your budget allows you to have. Many people think that word budget is so negative, but really for us, it was a gateway to the things that we wanted rather than a fence that prevented us from doing the things that we wanted.
Yeah, Jim Brown says that success is taking little positive steps regularly.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the last one is having a financial plan. John and I knew that we had to set a goal and reach for it. And one of the things that we did in doing that was we set up what we called mile marker goals. So we made these goals all along the way. We had this long-term goal of paying off $51,000 in credit card debt in 3 years, but we set up these small-term goals that allowed us to meet those. And we celebrated those small-term goals. Maybe it was that we allowed ourselves to go out for a $20 date, or we gave each other a small treat, whatever it was.
I had Ben and Jerry's ice cream in bed while I watched Golden Girls.
Right. All the girls. But we made sure that our rewards for meeting our goals didn't then put us a step back from where we were headed.
All right, we're on to our last question.
All right.
Any final tips for someone trying to get out of debt? Of course. One of the comments was change your money mindset. Another from Eric Neisel said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Patience and stick-with-itness are required.
Exactly.
Stick-with-itness is apparently one word. It's kind of hard to read. Matt Schultz says, focus on how you feel at the end. One of the greatest days of my life was when I became debt-free. I'll never forget it. #truth.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, focusing with that end in mind is so important, and it really does free you up from any obligation to race towards something. You know that you're going to get there when you focus with that end in mind. And as I'm sorry, I can't remember who said that it's a marathon, not a race.
Eric Neisel.
Right, Eric Neisel. So that you have to
account Lancer.
Right, move at this at the pace that is appropriate for you, or else you're gonna die out. And I don't know if you've ever run a race. John and I have been in a couple of 13 miles or half marathons, and we oftentimes see individuals who take off sprinting at the very beginning, and then maybe at mile 7 or 6 we find ourselves passing these individuals. So we definitely want to think of the total goal of how to really achieve that. I think one of the most important things, though, is to remember that you can do it. There are people who have dug themselves out of hundreds of thousands of dollars of consumer debt, student loan debt, and they've done this not because they've made massive amounts of money, but oftentimes they've done it because they've created the habits in their lives that allowed them to chip away at it and do that at a rapid pace. That they began to do that faster and faster, and that eventually allowed them to pay off their debt.
Yes. So it looks like Twitter is always ahead of like the audible verbose talkers.
Yeah, I talk too much.
But Twitter's wrapping it up, and we want to thank. I know that you probably couldn't see him on Facebook, but on Twitter we had our friends all over the place joined us. We want to thank them: Wisebread, Amanda Bea, Jackie Beck, Terry Slater, Eric Neisel, of course. We even had PT Money of the hashtag FinCon17 on with us. Matt Schultz. Jen Hempel, who provided some great insight.
Yeah, exactly.
So we want to thank all of those people for helping us and supporting us today. I don't know how Michael and Christina do this week after week. It's,
right.
It's a little bit stressful.
Well, you got to give a shout out because Christina looks like Christina joined us for the last few minutes here, and we really appreciate it. We know that you all are experienced and are doing a great job with your current situation, so we appreciate your having the trust to throw it over to Debt Free Guys and allow us to host today.
Yes,
so,
exactly. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you everybody for joining us, including Jim Wang and many, many others.
Right.
You made this a lot of fun. And I think we'll be able to keep this posted on debtfreeguys.com for a while. Is that right?
Exactly.
How does the internet work?
Yeah, this will stay on the Debt Free Guys wall. We're going to post this on YouTube. And we want to remind you that the Experian team does this every Wednesday at noon Pacific, 3 o'clock Eastern. They usually have a great group of individuals talking on a variety of topics. So if you go to, and I don't remember the exact site, but if you just search for hashtag CreditChat, you can find it on Facebook and Twitter, and then you can look up Experian and find out when they're hosting the next item or event and what the topic will be. So
exactly. So thank you all for joining us. It's been great. Hashtag thanks.
Yes, thank you. Have a great day.